Our theatre started with the Sanskrit drama ages ago. They said about Kalidas and Bhas, these were the torchbearers of our journey on the road to civilization. Despite Bharat's clear concept of stagecraft, our ancient Sanskrit theatre inevitably went through its phase of decadence. All the foreign invasions of the country, political turmoil, and changing conditions in every sphere of life must have been responsible for the end of royal patronage. During these difficult times, I think it was the common man who preserved our theatre. Sometimes without knowing he was doing this, through ritual as he prayed to God, or merely for entertainment, or both. Sometimes with a social or political purpose. We had the Yakshagana in Karnataka, the Ram Leela in the north, the Jatra in Bengal, the Krishnattam in Kerala, and the Tamasha in Maharashtra. The East India Company first pitched its camp in Calcutta about 300 years ago. This was the first time the British set foot on Indian soil, bringing with them the technique of staging entertainment as they knew it. This was the time when audiences from the city started flocking to performances in Calcutta theatres. Great artists like Girish Ghosh appeared in these plays. They used mammoth sets and gorgeous costumes, especially in historical plays. The Parsi theatre had music, dance and drama in large measure. Both the acting and the delivery of dialogue was very theatrical. We know that an opera-style performance staged by a Parsi company in Pune more than 100 years ago partly influenced the pioneering Marathi dramatist Anna Sahib Kirloskar. The Marathi version of opera had, of course, its own distinct stamp. We can recognize this in plays like Kirloskar's Saubhadra or Khadilkar's Man Apman, and in the stage contributions of Bal Gandharv, Keshav Rao Bhosle, Master Dinanath, and many others. Our Malayalam and Kannada theatres had a strong mythological base, like mainstream theatre everywhere. But there were a few attempts to introduce some social content. As the Gandharva era of musicals started fading in Maharashtra, pioneering experimental attempts were made by intellectuals influenced by Ibsen and Shaw. Even before independence, Indian theatre was fighting a losing battle with the talkie film. Theatres were transformed into cinemas, and the audience forgot their exclusive loyalty to drama. But we also had giants like Prithviraj Kapoor, who poured their earnings from films into purposeful theatre. The contribution made by the Indian People's Theatre Association during this period was highly significant. In the early 40s, a young actor-director called Shambhu Mitra literally turned the orthodox Bengali theatre upside down with his production of Bijon Bhattacharya's Navanno. In the decade after independence, both mainstream and experimental directors contributed to the revival of theatre in Bombay. Adi Marzaban, the comic genius of the Parsi Gujarati theatre, Ibrahim Al-Khazi with his theatre unit, Atmaram Bhende with the INT, Bhalba Kelkar with the PDA. These elders laid the foundations for future development in the urban theatre in Gujarati, Marathi, English and Hindi in this region. More than a decade after independence, a strong leftist movement swept over Bengal and Kerala. Theatre became a powerful instrument of influencing mass opinion all over the country, wherever there was political motivation for it.
What the theatre means to me, for the last 40 years, it has meant a weapon of political propaganda to me. And I've used it like that. However, we have to keep in mind that in order to be effective political propaganda, it has to be popular. It has to reach as many people as possible, especially in a country like ours where most people can't read or write. People who matter, that is. And theatre is, can easily build a bridge between us and them. They cannot read, but they can always watch a play, and they can hear the dialogue. So theatre has to be popular. And this dangerous tendency all over the world, a trend has come up, intellectualizing the theatre. and it has invaded our country too, and I think it's a bloody waste of time, because all you do is to drive more and more people out of the theatre, and theatre in isolation from the masses is a contradiction in terms. It means nothing.
The National School of Drama in New Delhi received a new lease of life in the year 1962, when Mr. Ibrahim Al-Qazi took over as its director.
In 1962, I was invited to head the National School of Drama, and I agreed to do so because I wanted to work on a national scale. I considered it as sort of a challenge to be able to produce actors who would tackle the problems of the theatre conditions in the country, and therefore the basic idea was to frame a syllabus that would serve the needs of the country as a whole. What we needed really was people strongly rooted in their own culture, that of the Western theatre, because after all the Western theatre has had such an important influence on the Indian theatre, and therefore the theatre from the Greeks right down to the present day, particularly the theatre of Bertolt Brecht, the theatre of Japan and China. But while all this was all very well in terms of theory, how do you think of it in terms of practice? A tremendous responsibility devolves upon the people of the theatre, upon the director, upon the actor. The theatre man is the interpreter of his times. He is the conscience of his race. What kind of awareness and insight does he bring to the problems of his day? What kind of humility does he bring to his task? What kind of understanding does he bring to the interpretation of a text so that it becomes relevant and meaningful to his contemporary audience? That is the basic problem of theatre.
Just when Al-Qazi was revolutionizing things at the NSD, an unprecedented movement for exchange in our regional theatres started. The late Mohan Rakesh in Hindi, Girish Karnad in Kannada, Vijay Tendulkar in Marathi, and Badal Sarkar in Bengali all contributed in various measure to this confluence of regional theatres. We now truly had and have a national theatre. The work of these avant-garde playwrights was matched by the imagination and effort put in by several young directors of this period. Actor-directors like Vijaya Mehta, Arvind Deshpande, Om Shivpuri, Shyamanand Jalan, Satyadev Dubey, and many others put across these plays with unusual sincerity and dedication.
For Indian theatre, basically, the music is very, very important. It's an integral part of theatre. I am not using, I don't want to use the music just like a decorative point. It's the interpretative, it's a part of speech. When I say sound plan, each sound, even the sigh, even the pause, even the silence, any sound, then music also. It may be narrative, it may be sing-song, it may be ritual, it may be anything, but the sound is there, it is a part of our speech.
Habib Tanveer's Charandas Chor is in a class of its own. His Chhattisgarhi tribal artists convey the message with an unusual sense of music, drama, and humor.
Today, culture actually should be seen very clearly as belonging to two camps. It is of two varieties. One of the exploiting class and the other of the exploited classes. And for this, in order to produce the correct, the right thematic thrust, it must have for its vehicle as its technique an indigenous idiom involved.
Vijay Tendulkar's Ghashiram Kotwal also absorbed folk forms in a very intelligent way. As a result, Tendulkar succeeded in creating a new form altogether. This was total theatre at its best. In many regions of the country, notably in Kerala, we have succeeded in harnessing traditional martial arts to the theatre. In Manipur, Ratan Thiam has worked a miracle on these lines in a production like Chakravyuh.
We train all the actors through martial art, through narrative forms, through Cholom, through Wari Liba, a lot of forms, which helps them to make them as a total actor, because the total concept of Indian theatre is always existed and has been always there for the last 3,000 years.
Kareem Kutti, a Malayalam play by Kovalam Panikar, has its roots in Kerala's folk theatre, but is done with a modern sensibility.
I started my career as a poet while I was in my village, and I brought this type of poetry to the theatre.
We also have an active English language theatre, which is trying hard to come to terms with indigenous theatre through the work of people like Pearl Padamsee, Vimal Bhagat, Barry John, and Sylvester de Cunha. Among its serious-minded attempts to give the best of world theatre is a production of Beckett's Waiting for Godot.
There's nothing to do.
One-actor shows like P.L. Deshpande's Batatyachi Chaal, Asami Asami, Tripti Mitra's Aparajita, and Suhasini Mulgaonkar's Saubhadra are remarkable efforts.
The use of space is a dynamic art, and one sees in the history of design a certain evolution in this use of space. In the classical Sanskrit and Greek theatre, one sees the use of an architectural space where the architecture itself has a certain subjective and conditioned meaning. Then one sees in the Renaissance the use of a pictorial space wherein the three-dimensionality of the actor and the two-dimensionality of the painted scenery are juxtaposed with one another, causing a different kind of a spatial equation. We then come to the turn of the 20th century, where we see the use of literal, actual space, realistic space, with Stanislavski and the whole wave of realism. Coming further into the 20th century, we come to the 20s, 30s, and 40s, where we come to the use of an abstract kind of space with the Bauhaus and the Dada. And finally, we come to a contemporary period where we see yet another revolutionary use of space, which is this use of cinematic space and the use of television space. Now, all these offer a different space-time equation, and it is through these means that a new level of communication is established.
Over the years, non-commercial theatre activity has spread through the length and breadth of the country. Serious theatre workers like Arun Mukherjee, Prasanna, Amol Palekar, Satish Alekar, Shekhar Chatterjee, Subanna, Bansi Kaul, Kanhaiya Lal, Arambham, and many others experimented in form and content both. Another challenge to live theatre, both urban and rural, came in the form of television.
Theatre is a live show. Direct man-to-man communication occurs in theatre. Theatre is here now. Two parties of human beings, the performers and the spectators, they come to the same place on the same day at the same time, and something happens between them. Therefore, theatre is human action. We left the proscenium theatre in 1972-73 because we found that the proscenium theatre is full of barriers between these two parties that have come together. But by that very action, we could free our theatre from the dependence on money, and we could evolve a flexible, portable, and inexpensive theatre which we can show free to the people, because the costly paraphernalia of theatre, the auditorium, the stage, the spotlights, the sets, become redundant in this form. Therefore, in our theatre, payment of a specific amount of money is not the condition of entrance. And through our experience of the last 15 years or so, we have found that the voluntary donation paid by even the poorest community in the villages suffices to run our theatre. We don't have to sell tickets, we don't have to apply for any grant, we don't have to collaborate with big business houses or have a rich patron, and we are not only surviving, but even thriving. In our theatre, content is the starting point, the primary point. We explore for the form which will be most suited to convey, to project our content most effectively, most intensely. Now, gradually, some other groups are also believing in our philosophy. So it is developing into a movement, not only in West Bengal, but in some other parts of the country as well.
Indian theatre shows every sign of surviving. Already, this age-old tradition of ours has through the centuries traveled from the palaces to the streets. And as long as human interaction and human communication is possible, it will survive.